And good evening, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Welcome to another episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I'm your host, as always, Tony Defio, and I thank you for joining me on this late February Friday evening where I'm at, where you're at, on one of our audio platforms, perhaps. It could be a sunny Sunday morning somewhere. I always say that because I want the winter to be over. But wherever you are, whatever day it is, and however you're listening or watching this show, I hope you are well. And I hope you are ready for some awesome Steelers talk, because I know I am. And before I get started, I just wanted to encourage you to please check out all of our podcasts, both live, such as this one, which you can catch this show on YouTube and Facebook. You can catch the Steelers Hangover with me and Brian Anthony Davis on Monday evenings. You can catch that on YouTube and Facebook. That's a live show. The Touchdown Under Show is a live show. The Steelers Preview is a live show. The Curtain Call with Michael Beck and Jeffrey Benedict, that's a live show. But you can also catch all those shows on any audio platform, and you can catch audio exclusive shows on that platform as well, such as the Retro Show, the Live Mic, Let's Ride, the Stat Geek. Did I miss any? I'm sure I did, but there's plenty of them out there, and we never stop doing podcasts. We never stop writing. Speaking of which, please check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website, where we bring you 10 articles a day or thereabout, news, commentary, film breakdown. We're a few weeks away from the start of the NFL's new calendar year, which means we're a few weeks away from free agency. We're a few weeks away from finding out once and for all if Big Ben is coming back. It looks like he is officially coming back, or it's all but official. I'll tell you. I'll let you know how I feel about that in the second half of the show. But that was the big news of the week. If you're a Steeler fan, his agent came out and basically reiterated what Kevin Colbert and Art Rooney have already said, and that they're willing to work things out. And it almost feels official now. And later in the show, I'll let you know if that's a good idea, or if I feel as if that's a good idea or not. So, idea. When am I from Boston? Idea. Anyway, I just want to welcome everybody to the live chat. There's Gyro, Kathy Forrid, Art Gordon. That's actually a cool sounding name. Art Gordon for president. Jacob Jackson, Jade Aston, Steelers Pittsburgh, Eric Pereira, just me. And Jade Aston says he loves my show. I got to put that up there. I need a good ego boost tonight. So thank you very much. Who else we have here before I get started? Mark Davison. Speaking of the Touchdown Under Show, Nathan Rich, Snowman. Wow, there's the legend Snowman. Hickok Roberts. Wow, this is quite a full night tonight. I feel so special. So let's see. I have a few topics, as always, I wanted to discuss. And the first thing, it's not really Steeler related, but it's NFL related, and it has to do with their the league is reportedly, actually it's all but official now. They're gonna double their rights fees with the with all the major networks. I mean, that's what kind of audacity some might say that they have. I think each network was paying roughly $1 billion a year during the previously agreed on contract, which runs through 2021. ESPN, Disney was paying $1.9 billion, and the league is trying to double that. And I think I read before I came on that Disney has reportedly agreed to like a 50% increase, like $2.9 billion, which is still a big increase. And ABC is going to get back into Super Bowl rotation. Maybe Monday Night Football. Maybe ESPN will get some better matchups on its package. We'll see. But I just think it tells you all you need to know about the state of television and how divided the pie is right now, and probably it will get worse and worse and worse as we move forward. That the league can ask the net or demand that the networks double their fees and get away with it. I mean, the NFL is probably the last televised show, event, scripted, reality, whatever, sporting event that can generate the kind of audience that brings millions of people together each week. There's really no other show that can do that on a weekly basis. Maybe every now and then, but the NFL averages about, in 2020 it averaged 15.4 million viewers per week when you average all the networks together, and it's by far the hottest ticket out there, and that's what a 7% decrease in ratings. It's still such a valuable commodity that the league is confident in asking networks to double their fee, and they're all gonna go along with it because it's the only TV show that's really worth a whole heck of a lot anymore, and that's NFL football. Really, I mean, it is. I mean, you talk about some shows from recent history that were really popular. Shows like Game of Thrones, right? A lot of my friends just gushed over that show, and they had to get home in time to watch it every Sunday night on HBO. And would they average like 13, 14 million? I mean, those are the kind of ratings that would have got a show canceled back in the 80s and 90s. You know, I mean, Chips used to get 25, 30 million viewers a week. And I was a big Chips fan, but, you know, trying to watch those shows now is kind of tough. Chips didn't really hold up over time, but there were only three major networks back then. And the pie was like, you know, divided up in 3 or 4 big pieces. Whereas now the pie is like, there's like little slivers, you know, and the NFL still has the biggest piece of the pie. So it just tells you all you need to know. You know, I know a lot of people were actively rooting for the league to go under with all the social justice stuff that has been going on the last few years, but that's just, it looks like it's not going to happen anytime soon. In fact, the owners are going to get even richer because of the new TV deals. So that's the first topic I wanted to discuss, and see if I have any other any new faces in the live chat. Nope, same old faces. But there's Chad Landsman from Facebook. He's a new Facebook regular. I welcome Chad. Bry 160701. My new job. I say a lot of numbers, so I'm used to saying lots of numbers, so I'm not intimidated by that name. Manny Silva. He says, well, I'm not gonna tell you what he says, but he tells me, well, actually, I will tell you what he says. You know, this is one of the drawbacks of being on Facebook is you have a lot of geniuses that come on, and he tells me I should do my show sober. I am sober. It's just how I talk. But Manny's he's a football expert. Maybe he should have his own show someday. You know, we should sign him up. But that's another that's a topic I don't want to get into. But Facebook's not one of my favorite places. And he's one of the main reasons why. But not to devote too much time to Facebook. That's not what the show's about. My next topic has to do with the draft. And I was watching a Steelers 49ers game from 1984 earlier this morning for the retro show, one of our next retro shows I'm going to record with Brian Anthony Davis. And during the broadcast, Bob Trumpy, who was the color analyst, you know, he pointed out why the Steelers had been in decline in the early 80s. And that's because year after year, starting in the mid 70s, they were drafting at the end of the first round, year after year after year. And the NFL is a war of attrition, right? And there's a reason why they call the NFL a league of parity and why it's set up the way it is, because they want teams that are struggling to draft high, and the teams that are winning to sort of have to get the scraps at the end of each round. And that's what the Steelers had to go through for many years. They had some really great drafts in the late 60s through 1974. But really, I mean, people talk about those drafts and how great they were, and they drafted 9 future Hall of Famers, 10 if you count Donnie Shell, who they signed as an undrafted free agent out of South Carolina in 1974. So they brought in a bunch of talent over a half a decade, and it led to 4 Super Bowls in 6 years, and perhaps the greatest dynasty of all time. But starting in like 1975, I mean, their drafts were pretty pedestrian. I mean, they were really unable to produce any great talent from those drafts. And Chuck Noll even said, according to his wife on the Football Life episode about Chuck Noll, they were coming home from Super Bowl 14, the victory over the Rams, and according to her, he turned to her on the plane ride and said, look, these next few years are going to be pretty lean because we've been drafting poorly. We've been drafting late, and it's going to be kind of ugly. And sure enough, it was. And I think that's, when you look at the Steelers' decade since Super Bowl 45, their appearance against the Packers, I think you can see the effect of drafting near the end of the first round, or I'm sorry, the end of each round from like 2004 all the way up through, 2013, right? I mean, that's when they drafted 2013 when they drafted Jarvis Jones, 18th. No, I take that back. Pouncey was 18th in 2010, so they had a mid round pick or a mid first round pick in 2010. But other than that, it was end of the first round, year after year after year, and some of those drafts, like the 08 draft, I mean, that was considered a great draft on paper. They drafted Rashard Mendenhall, Lima Swede. Remember Ryan Mundy? People were excited about him. Dennis Dixon was in that draft, right? I mean, he wasn't really, with Ben here, he was never going to be anything special here, but people were still excited about him and how great of a value pick he was after having the knee injury at Oregon. I think it was in the senior year. He was going to be a top 5 pick, but Pittsburgh got him in I think in the middle of the I think in the 5th round. And within a few years, that draft class, none of those guys were on the team anymore. And I think when people talk about how they were unable to build a defense for so many years, well, it's hard to do that when you're drafting in the 20s, and their late draft picks continued even after those Super Bowl years because they were so good, or they were good enough to continue to contend, even though they weren't really a Super Bowl team anymore. They went out and they got guys like Jarvis Jones, Artie Burns, and it just overall, it just didn't work for them. And in order for them to rebuild their defense, they had to go out and get former top 10 picks. They had to go out and sign a Joe Hayden. They had to go out and trade for a Minkah Fitzpatrick, who was a top 5, top 10 talent in the 2018 draft. And they never would have been able to get these guys in the draft. So they had to go out and sign them and trade for them. Devin Bush is another one. They had to trade up to get him. They had to trade up into the top 10 2 years ago to get him. Otherwise, they would still probably be searching for their next inside linebacker. So, I think, when you talk about Pittsburgh's struggles over the past decade and how they had the quote unquote most talent in the league, but they always underachieved, that really wasn't true. They had some exceptional all pros on offense. Obviously, AB, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell. They had one heck of an offensive line. Of course, they had Ben, but their defense was always mediocre or worse. And you really can't compete with a incomplete team. So I thought that was a pretty interesting thing that Trumpy brought up 37 years ago, because it still rings true to this day. You need to draft well. You need to be able to draft higher up to really find the best players. And so I just thought that was pretty interesting. And that brings me to my next topic, as I'll take a break to allow Brian to catch up when he's editing this. And my next topic has to do with this year's draft. And I want to ask you out there in the live chat and Facebook, those of you who aren't insulting me like Manny Silva, when do you normally start getting ready for the draft? When do you normally start looking forward to it? Because I remember leading up to the 1989 draft, it was probably Christmas time, and I was already writing down names like Eric Metcalf. I remember that name like it was yesterday. I really wanted them to get him. Obviously, guys like Barry Sanders, I was excited about. Deion Sanders, I liked him a lot. Derek Thomas was an exceptional talent. So, I mean, I already knew about these players months before the draft, And the funny thing is, back then, the only way I could find this out was by going to the grocery store and going to the magazine rack and reading the magazine while my grandparents were shopping, while my mom was shopping. And they never bought me any of these magazines. I couldn't afford any. I didn't have a job, I was 15, 16 years old, so I didn't work. So I basically had to wait and wait for specific times of the year to to get my, to gather my draft data. Whereas today, I have access to it 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And I don't start paying attention to the draft. Honestly, I'm just being, people always ask me about this player or that player. I honestly don't start paying attention to mock drafts until mid to late March, because my opinion is it changes so much, and you really don't know about these guys. Their draft stocks rise and fall so frequently. By the time the draft even gets here, there's really no point in getting all worked up about it, in my opinion, in January or February, because you just don't know. When you look at draft history, like a Phillip Rivers, for example, heading into the 2004 draft, he wasn't expected to be even a top 10 pick. I think even weeks before that draft, he was maybe expected to go in late in the first round. And next thing you know, he's the fourth guy taken off the board, right? He made Ben's agent really angry. Remember that, where he threw the water when they were sitting at the table at the in the ballroom, wherever they were at, So, I mean, when you got the combine and pro days, I mean, and you factor in free agency, what teams do then. And it changes so much that I just don't feel the urgency to really, really devote much mental energy in following the mock drafts or anything like that until like a month or so before. So that's just me. And I'm interested to see how you guys feel about that. Do you get into it like as soon as the Steelers season is over? Do you start following mock drafts? Do you start getting into the draft? Do you start writing down who you think they're going to take? Because I mean, you still have 4 months to go. That's a third of a calendar year before the draft even gets here. So do you invest time into it that early? That's just let's see what we have here. Some comments from the folks. Let's see here. I thought I saw a good one here. Tony, draft. There we go. Here's one from Ezra. True, draft stocks rise and fall, but Najee Harris can run the rock. I thought you were going to say run the ball. That would have rhymed. But run the rock. Yeah, I mean, I've heard so much about him, and he's one of those players he's a running back, so I doubt that he's going to be drafted in the top half of the first round, but he's one of those players that you just don't know. He could be in the middle of the first round. He could fall all the way into the second round based on team needs and how the league values running backs now. And I think we can all agree that the running back, the value of that position has fallen off greatly since the 80s and 90s when your top running backs like a Barry Sanders. He was second? He was drafted third or fourth in 1989. A player like him today, he might last until late in the first round, even into the second. It's just how it is now. So, a guy like that, if you're the Steelers, what if there's a center on the board that maybe is not going to be there in the second round at 24, but Harris is there as well. Who do you pick, right? What do you go with? What do you value more based on how drafts go now? Do you gamble that Harris will still be there at the end of the second round? Or do you take him with the 24th pick and hope that you can find a center in the second or third round? I mean, these are always, interesting things. And here we are as of today, we're about 2 months away from the draft, so, I mean, there's still a lot of time for by the time the draft gets here, Harris might be a third round pick. I mean, honestly, seriously, you just never know. A couple of pro days gone wrong or one pro day gone wrong. I mean, there's not going to be a combine this year, at least not a traditional one. So, it's amazing how unstable these things can be. I mean, when you're talking about like the top 10 prospects, normally they're pretty accurate, but anything beyond that, it's just such a crapshoot. It's such a guessing game. And the further you are from the draft, the harder it is to really, like last year, it was so hard to figure out who Pittsburgh was going to take with the 49th pick. That was their first pick in the draft, the middle of the second round, late, past the middle of the second round, really. and we just didn't know, and we speculated on it, and we were pulling our hair out, whatever little hair I have left. I couldn't figure it out who they were going to get, and my attitude going into that draft was running back, receiver, offensive lineman, outside linebacker. I was okay with it all. Inside linebacker, because you just did not know who was going to be there. So, that's I just think it's funny how my draft passions have changed since I was a teenager. I used to just live for it, and I didn't have the access that I do now. And now I have the access, and it's just like, all right, let me know when March is almost over. It looks like I've missed a $5 super chat, or maybe I haven't missed it yet, but I know we have one. I got to go find that sucker. And let's see who said it. X Eddie donates $5, and thank you for that. And he says, glad Claypool didn't go to the Ravens. How about all those playoff drops by Dobbins? Still want him, Steelers fans? Well, I think he's a good talent, J.K. Dobbins, and you can't really you can't write him off after one bad game. But I think it's a good example of why you can't get too emotional about the draft, because I remember distinctly, for whatever reason, when I was watching the draft last year, I don't know what it is with Comcast, but I was like on I swear to God, a 5-minute delay. And I knew Chase Claypool was going to be the pick 5 minutes before it was announced on ESPN because of Twitter. And I remember seeing distinctly one person going, no, in all capital letters on Twitter, no. And I'm like, is Michael Myers chasing you with a butcher knife? What's going on? Why be that dramatic about it? And now, Chase Claypool, he looks like he's going to be a first-team All-Pro for the next 5 years. I mean, that's just how talented he is, right? He looks to be, moving forward. I mean, he had an exceptional rookie year. I thought he should have gotten more love than he did when it came to Rookie of the Year and even All-Pro honors. And maybe not first-team All-Pro, but certainly second or third team if they go that far down. He certainly deserved more recognition than he got. He was named to the All-Rookie team, but I mean, gosh, he kind of went under the radar for first of all, he came from Notre Dame. So you would figure he would have more national love, but whatever. I think he's going to be an exceptional talent, and he's a great example that don't get too emotional about who they pick. Because I remember people being upset about T.J. Watt. I mean, come on, T.J. Watt. If there was a redraft today, he'd be in the top 5. So on that note, at the 23-minute mark, I am going to take a break. If you're watching live on YouTube or Facebook, I am not going anywhere. If you're listening on one of our audio platforms, please download part 2. And that's when I'll get into the Ben Roethlisberger stuff. Once again, like all of us, everybody's talking about Big Ben, and it looks like he's coming back. And I will let you know how I feel about it. So please stay tuned. And we are back. Welcome back to the second half of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. If you've downloaded part 2, thank you for doing so. It's greatly appreciated. If you stuck with me in the live feed, thank you for that too. That's obviously appreciated. We're all one big family here. And my man T Money, Terry, showed up. My friend Terry. You talk about somebody who knows his sports history. And he says, and he brings up a great point. This is a fantastic point. Thank you, Terry. This is why I have Terry on retainer, because whoops, I lost him. That's not why. Anyway, he says Joe Green was not a welcome draft choice, and this is why I value his opinion, because he's exactly right. The papers the next day said, "Who's Joe Green?" or "Joe who," or whatever they said, and the local fans wanted Terry Hanratty, because he was from Butler and because he was a Notre Dame quarterback. They wanted him in the first round. I mean, they got him in the second round, but Terry Hanratty was a nice backup for a few years here, and I think he was on a couple of the Super Bowl. I know he was on one of the Super Bowl teams. I think he might have been on 2 of them. But anyway, he was nothing special. So that's why you can't get too upset about what happens the night of the draft, because it's not about winning or losing then. It's about winning or losing in the fall and in winter. And Chase Claypool certainly proved that. And so as TJ Watt and Ryan Shazier was he was a rather. I mean, people weren't upset about the reach. They didn't think they reached for him, but they were kind of, wow, why are you drafting an inside linebacker when cornerback's such a big need? But obviously, they needed him for the middle of that defense. So, but he was another surprise to many. But what I want to get into next in this part of the show is the news last week that, coming from Aditi Kinkabala of the NFL Network, who tweeted that she spoke with Ryan Tolner, Big Ben's agent, Ben Roethlisberger's agent, and he reinforced what Kevin Colbert and Art Rooney have already said, and that's that they are willing to work things out, and Ben's coming back for 2021. He's going to be back, and that seemed to be the final nail in the coffin as far as whether or not he was coming back, in a good way, if you're a Big Ben fan. But if you're not a Big Ben fan, then you didn't like it a lot, and it was shocking to me. And it seems like I'm saying this every week, but like reading the comments, like on Behind the Steel Curtain, on Twitter, on Facebook, anywhere there was a comment section, listening to talk shows, people were so down about it. They're so down about Ben coming back, like reality setting in. It's like, holy cow. I mean, a year ago at this time, we were hoping and praying that his right elbow would be able to recover from major surgery in time for the season. We were rooting for it. We were so excited when he threw that football in late February in that gym in California. We were so excited when he released that hype video. I think it was in May when he had that big beard, but he looked thin enough to be Santa Claus from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. You could tell he lost a lot of weight, and he was working out with Juju and James Conner and his buddy, what's his name? I forget his name already. Number 10, the receiver that nobody liked. God, I can't believe I forgot his name already. But no offense to him. Anyway, we were so excited about that, and we were so defensive of Ben. And when these national pundits came out and said, how can you be so excited about him? He's fat and old, and his elbow's shot. They should have cut him. We got it. 4 years ago, 4 off seasons ago, when he kind of hinted that he might want to retire. We were so taken aback by that. We wanted him to, we waited on pins and needles for 3 months for him to finally make his decision and let us know that he was coming back for 2017, and now we're just like, oh, Ben's retired. Ben's coming back. FML, as the kids said 10 years ago, and I just don't get it. I mean, I realize that people were worried about that 19 million, but apparently from what I've read, they can still save 14 million of that 19 million with a contract extension. So, and they would just, prorate the rest of it out over a couple of years. And people are just upset about it. Like, all right, what are they going to do? Like, say they cut them and saved an extra 5 million. What are they going to do with that money? That's going to make them that much better for 2021. They're going to have cap problems in 2021, whether Ben's here or not. So they might as well have him here and go for it one last time with him as their starter. He's their best option. He's a better option than Mason Rudolph, Dwayne Haskins, anybody else you can name that's realistic, other than, if you want to throw Deshaun Watson at me, great, but it's not going to happen. And guys like Marcus Mariota and even Matthew Stafford, okay, whatever. I mean, those guys don't move the needle for me at all. So, he gives them the best chance to win. Their defense is going to be healthier, you would assume, with Devin Bush. They prepared for the exit of Bud Dupree by drafting Alex Highsmith. Even before Ben had his bad stretch at the end of the year, we were all prepared for Bud Dupree to leave. We knew he was going to leave. Now all of a sudden they want Ben to retire and they want to bring back Bud. And I got news for you: torn ACL or not, he's going to get big bucks in free agency. And I have another live super chat that I got to get to while I'm rambling from Dave Shipley, and he says, Ben is the real deal. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go. Absolutely, Dave, and thank you for the $5 donation. I don't know if he's a real deal like he was 10 years ago. I don't know if he's ever gonna hit his, be that player he was in 2014 when he threw 6 touchdowns in back-to-back games. I don't know if he's ever gonna be that guy again. Maybe he does have to cut back on all the throwing. Maybe he does need help with the running game. Maybe they do need. I can't talk. Maybe that guy was right. Anyway, they do need to upgrade the O-line, but it doesn't mean that he can't be an effective quarterback for them and help them win at the age of 39. We've seen it before. We saw it with Peyton Manning. Obviously, Tom Brady just did it. Aaron Rodgers is still in his prime and still like a freaking beast, right? MVP candidate. Did he win it? I don't even know. Who won the MVP? It doesn't matter. But I'm so prepared for this show. But anywho, the best that they could do is save $19 million without Ben. You get rid of Ben, you save $19 million. You keep Ben, you save $14 million. To me, I think it's a nice trade-off. It's a nice trade-off. You still have a nice set of receivers. The running game, we don't know about yet. We don't know what's going to happen with that. They're linked to guys like Aaron Jones and Chris Carson, but I don't see that happening because if they want Ben to take a big pay cut, or if they want to cut Ben, then why would they want to invest that much money into a running back? So I think their best route is probably going to be the draft, or like we talked about on Monday on the Hangover, a guy like Marlon Mack, a guy you could probably get on the cheaper side. So that's how you can maybe fix the running game without spending extravagantly. But you still have a nice set of receivers. You still have Eric Ebron if you want him back. I know a lot of people soured on him for whatever reason, the drops, I guess. But he's still a nice weapon for them, and Ben seemed to really lean on him over the course of the year. Chase Claypool's only going to get better. They obviously draft receivers really well, so there's always an opportunity for them to bring another one in, even if Juju leaves. We were prepared for that. That's why they drafted Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson and all these and James Washington, because they were preparing for the departure of guys like Juju. And here's a super chat from Just Me, $5. Thank you. Tony loves your shows. Who would be the best pick or change to help our O-line? Well, I don't know about, as I said earlier in the show, I really haven't. All honesty, I haven't paid much attention to the draft prospects just yet. Maybe I should do that just for the sake of this show. But I don't know who would be the best draft choice or free agent. But I do know they have some guys in house that I'm excited about. I like Zach Banner. I like Kevin Dotson. Matt Filer is still a possibility if they want to move him back over to one of the tackle spots. Shooks, he should be coming into his own. I don't know if he ever will, but he's coming into year 4. They really should start seeing some progress from him. So there are options in house, but last year when they went out and they signed a Stefan Wisniewski, there's a guy who they brought him in to be a backup, but he could have started for them 16 games if they really needed him to, but they got him on a cheap deal. You can find a guy like that in free agency, bring him in, maybe bring him in and have him play center or guard for a year, and you draft somebody maybe in the second, third, maybe first round, and have him sit and learn for a year. So that's my. But thank you for the $5. And on that note, I think I will take some questions to round out the show. Let's see here. Here's one from Chad Landsman, and he says, J.J. Watt is best to go elsewhere, and Derek can join him. Well, I don't think J.J. Watt's going to come here. He might not be about the money anymore. He might be looking for a ring to sort of cement his legacy because he's made all the money he's going to need. But there's still so many suitors out there that somebody's going to make him an offer that it'll be too hard for him to pass up. I mean, they're all businessmen at the end of the day. So I don't see him coming here. I don't see him settling for the kind of deal that Pittsburgh would pay him. As far as Derek Watt's concerned, I mean, it really wasn't a great year for him here. Maybe there's something to be said for signing Chargers free agents, because they signed Ladarius Green a few years earlier, and that was a disaster. And Derek Watt didn't really have a great year. I think if he wasn't a Watt brother, he would the goodwill towards him would be a lot less. So I don't know. Maybe they'll make a decision on him and part ways with him, depending on the dead money or whatever. I don't know. We'll see. It's we still have, let's see, 3 weeks to go before free agency kicks in. So a lot can happen between now and then. You know, it's a week-to-week thing at this point. Let's see what else we have here. Here's one from Ezra, and he asks, do you really want to sign Aaron Jones? I think he's overrated. No, I don't want to sign him, because I don't know if he's overrated or not, but I know he's going to command, according to Pro Football Focus, he's going to command $13 million a year. And I don't see the point of moving on from Ben and saying, we can't pay you $19 million, Ben. We either got to get rid of you, or you have to take a massive pay cut, and then bringing in a running back and paying him $13 million a year. I mean, I like Aaron Jones. I think he's a good talent, but I wouldn't pay $13 million for any running back anymore. Not after everything that happened with Le'Veon Bell, Gordon, all those guys. Who was the guy that, played for the Rams? We're in the offseason. I can't think of any names. But, all these guys, they kind of just drop off after a certain point. After a certain number of carries, they just lose it. They lose a step or two or three. And Le'Veon Bell is just basically a shell of his former self. So I wouldn't pay that kind of money for any running back. So that's why I like Brian Anthony Davis's idea of bringing a guy like Marlon Mack, rebuilding that line, maybe rededicating yourself to the running game, and that's how you become a better. Todd Gurley, thank you for that. That was from AJ Gavin. And here's a $10 super chat from Snowman. There he is, Robin Masters, and he says, Steelers need to draft offensive line in the first round and go running back in the second. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go. Well, there you go. I agree with the. I don't know any. I apologize to just me and all these people. I should do some. I'm gonna I promise you, for next week's show, I'm gonna research some mock drafts, because I guess I got to get into it. I'm doing a show. I'm doing multiple shows a week now. I have to be more dedicated. I can't be like Magnum PI. They always made fun of him for not being, as prepared as he should be, and he was always winging it. I can't do that. So maybe I'll study some mock drafts for next week's show and share my opinions on some of these guys, even though I'm not an expert by far. So here's one from Terry T Money, and he says, "Good O-line creates good running backs." Yes, Matt Williamson, who is an expert, he's a scout, and he's somebody whose opinion I value greatly. I listen to him all the time. He's of the opinion that a quarterback can make up for a good O-line. I think we've seen that with Ben in the past, or a bad O-line, I should say. We've seen that with Ben and Aaron Rodgers and even Andrew Luck. He seemed to thrive despite getting beat up all the time. But a good offensive line can make a running back. We saw that with the Broncos in the late 90s. It didn't matter who, even though Terrell Davis was a special talent, they always seemed to have the ability to run the ball because they had such a great offensive line. And we've seen that with lots of teams in the past. You build that offensive line up, you create the holes, and you're gonna be able to have a productive ground game. So here's one from Gyro. How much do you think a fifth-year option matters for a running back? I don't think it matters at all. I don't think it matters at all. Not anymore. Not unless it's a really special talent, a once-in-a-generation talent. And even then, I don't know if you can trust them. Because again, once they get to be, unless you're Adrian Peterson or Frank Gore, and somebody should study those guys. I said that to Brian on Monday. Somebody should study those guys and find out what makes them tick and why they can last in the league so long. And so many other running backs just sort of fade out to, so bad that Le'Veon Bell a few years ago was talking about trying to create a union for just running backs. That's how protected that some people feel that they need to be. So, and here's one from Dallas Quinley. Where do we get our next tight end? Well, I don't think you want to go for a free agent again this year. I know Vance McDonald just retired, but you invested in it last year with Ebron. If you keep him around, then I think you can you draft somebody in the top 2 or 3 rounds. They haven't done that in a while. Maybe it's time that they do. They really haven't invested highly in a tight end since, is it Heath Miller? Or is that the last guy they really spent the premium pick on? I think so. So maybe that's somebody they can that's the avenue that they can take. So here's one from Just Me. Let's see what she says here. She says, my 2-year-old grandson was at the store and saw a guy with a Steelers lanyard and said, is that Go Steelers? So proud. Yes. That's teaching him young. I didn't really get into the football until I was about 6 or 7. So he's really like Tiger Woods playing golf at the age of 3 on the Tonight Show. He's really learning young. So good for you. Good for you for teaching him young. What else we have here? Here's one from Mark Tobin, and he says, well, he doesn't say that. That was me being too slow. He says, Ben didn't have a chance at Jets. Come on, people, who will succeed up there? Oh, Bell didn't have a chance. Yeah, I'm sorry. I read that wrong. Yeah, I kind of agree, but I think you sort of saw in 2017 that he kind of lost a step or two. He still had a productive year, but he wasn't quite the same player that he was. They really ran him to death between 2014 and 2016, especially at the end of that 2016 season. You remember all the receivers were hurt other than Antonio Brown, and they really had no other weapons other than Bell, and they really rode him into the playoffs, into that AFC Championship game, that 9-game winning streak, and he set all kind of records, and it was great. But I think after that year, he kind of, if you remember that year, that's when he tore his groin in the playoffs, and he wasn't really able to go in the AFC Championship game against the Patriots. He had off-season surgery, and he really has not been the same since then. So, it was a bad situation for him in New York, as it is for a lot of players who go up there. But I don't think he would have been great anywhere else. I think he kind of hit a wall at a certain point, and I think he's just, if he hangs around anymore, it's just going to be as a bit player until he finally decides to become a full-time rapper or whatever he decides to do. So on that note, it's almost 10 o'clock. I think I'm going to call it a night. I don't feel like I'm on top of my game. I am sober, unlike, but I maybe I'm not having my best night. I'm kind of tired from work, even though I've been off for 2 days. That's how physical my job is. So maybe it's time for me to call it a night. But I thank you guys for joining me and for interacting with me and for all the live chats, all the super chats, all the donations. It was great. It was very generous of you, and you guys always make me feel like I'm doing a good job, even though when I feel like I'm not, like tonight. But I will see you definitely on Monday night with Brian Anthony Davis on The Hangover, and I will see you next Friday on another edition of Friday Night Six Pack. So you guys have a great weekend, and go Steelers.